Hi everybody, welcome to Ecodriver. My name is Helmut. In this video I show you 5 tips and tricks how to drive hybrid cars more efficiently. There was some demand from my viewers for some general guidance to eco-driving, and I will do a series of 4 videos with the most popular drivetrains and talk about their idiosyncrasies when it comes to eco-driving. So this is the first video and this is about full hybrids. Tip number 1. Gentle braking. Firstly, braking is a good idea to avoid accidents. Full stop. However, from a physics point of view, braking is converting energy. We build up speed with a car by using a lot of energy. And this energy is now stored in the movement of the vehicle. That's called kinetic energy. So when we are reducing the speed, this energy must go somewhere. And with electric or electrified vehicles like full hybrids, this energy is converted back to electric energy and can be stored in the batteries. But we have to keep in mind that the electric motor on most common hybrids, there are exceptions, but with most vehicles, with most hybrids out there, the electric motor is rather small and weak, doesn't have a lot of power. And for accelerating in city traffic or just starting from a standstill, 40, 50, 60, 70 kilowatts isn't a problem, because electric motors have their highest torque when they start beginning to rotate. So once the electric motor starts moving, you have the highest torque, and that means you have enough power when accelerating from a standstill. But the faster you go, the less power the engine has. The torque goes down rapidly, and the number of revs cannot compensate for the loss in torque. So you have noticed when you go with an electric car or a hybrid at higher speeds, you don't have a lot of power, and in most cases with hybrids the combustion engine kicks in. Now let's have a look at braking. When braking electric vehicles or electrified vehicles, the electric motor works as a generator, and in the process of reducing the speed, electric energy is produced. However, normally only about 65 to 85% of the nominal power of the electric motor can be produced while braking. So if you have 50 kilowatts for driving, you probably have around 40 kilowatts for braking. And this means, especially at a little bit higher speeds, I'm not talking about 150 kilometers an hour, I'm talking about 40, 50, 60 kilometers an hour, you probably don't have enough power to reduce the speed properly with the electric motor only. What happens? The friction brakes are used. So in order to make the best possible use of the potential braking energy stored, you need to brake gently. I'll show you here an example of the Ford Explorer, which is a plug-in hybrid, but the principle is still the same. You see here this little box, and this indicates the potential braking energy, and the little bar inside indicates how much of this potential energy is produced at the moment when braking. And once you exceed this little box, that means, you see here, it turns white, and this means the friction brakes are used because the electric motor doesn't have enough power to brake the car properly. Tip number 2, keep the car in motion. This one is related to braking. Especially in city traffic, try to keep the car in motion. I hear people say hybrids store the braking energy and use this to accelerate the car, so it's best to brake a lot, so you have more energy to accelerate. Well, the perpetuum mobile isn't invented yet. As I have explained earlier, firstly, the electric motor doesn't have enough power to brake the car properly, especially from higher speeds. And secondly, the electric motor is producing roughly 80% of the power it has available for accelerating when braking. Well, that is what the motor does, but when it comes to consumption, it's more than the motor, it's the whole car. And when we look at the process of driving or accelerating, there are other forces which require a lot of energy, like wind resistance, like the rubber tires resistance, like the internal mechanical resistance of the car. All those mechanical parts, they move and they use energy. And the same principle applies for braking. So if you wouldn't brake the car yourself, there are other forces that brake the car, which, as I said, wind resistance, rubber tires, the rolling resistance of the rubber tires, the internal resistance, and so on. So when accelerating, you need more power to accelerate the car than you would need for just move the weight of the vehicle, whereas when braking, you produce less power than you would produce when converting the kinetic energy into electric energy. So that means overall we are far away from those 80% plus minus that are potentially possible to regenerate. I have done a lot of tests, especially for my German channel, and those videos will be translated to English and put on this channel over the next couple of weeks. So I've done a lot of tests there, and under the best circumstances, with the best possible car, with the most efficient drivetrain and the most efficient driving style, with a driver who knows what he's doing, the maximum you can get in is around 50%. That's maximum. We know from tests from my company and tests that I did myself, in city traffic you only get back roughly between 25 and 45% of the energy that you have used in the first place. So you never get back what you have invested. And those tests were made with pure electric vehicles, which have big, strong electric motors, which regenerate much more than those small electric motors we normally find in hybrids. So what does this mean for us? Well, just avoid braking. Try to keep the car in motion, try to look ahead, read the road. I'll show you here a video I've done with the Ford Kuga full hybrid. You see here the traffic lights ahead of me are red. So I already stopped the acceleration process and approached the traffic lights rather slow. If you look at the cars on the left, they are all much faster, then they need to brake. You see all the brake lights, they need to almost come to a full stop, and I just keep the car in motion and I pass them with 30 kilometers an hour, whereas they all come to a stop and need to accelerate and therefore need much more energy. So always try to read the road ahead of you, try to anticipate what is happening, and in general try to avoid a change in speed, which is the most efficient way of driving. Just keep the speed as steady as possible. Tip number 3, gentle acceleration. Hybrids work in different ways. Toyotas and Fords work different to Hondas, different to Volvos or Volkswagens. So there are slight differences in the technical explanation. However, in general, we can say that accelerating from a standstill, the car works like an EV. And as long as the hybrid works in EV mode, the use of energy is very efficient. As we know that electric motors are much more efficient than combustion engines, roughly by factor 3. And with most hybrids, as we've said before, the power output is limited. If you accelerate hard or harder than the electric motor would allow or is able to deliver, the combustion engine kicks in, and then you are in the less efficient mode of driving. To avoid that, it makes sense to allow the electric motor to do the work. Therefore, not using too much power which exceeds the power of the electric motor. And let's be honest, in regular traffic, in cities, off a traffic light or out of a turn, how often do you really need to accelerate hard? Once the stored energy in the battery is used, then the combustion engine will kick anyway. But the later that happens, the better for the efficiency. I'll show you a short clip of my trip with the Toyota CHR. You see, we stop here at the traffic light, 63.6 kilometers is on the odometer, and now we accelerate, and I'm driving just behind the car in front of me. I'm not a blockage to the cars behind me. Here we turn left, we have to accelerate, there's a roundabout, we have to stop, and now the combustion engine kicks in. So it was around 700 meters that we were going in pure electric mode. Tip number 4, playing with the road. This might sound a bit strange. So what do I mean by that? To illustrate that, let's look at a roller coaster. How does it work? Well, the cars are pulled up to the highest point, and then they are let loose, and they make their whole way to the end only with gravity and kinetic energy. And when having changes of the gradient on the road, we can do the same. If you drive downhill, followed by a flat section or another ascent, try to build up some momentum that you can take into this next section, and therefore reduce the amount of energy in order to keep the speed or that you use when you have to go uphill. If you're going up, if the hill isn't very long and you know it will flatten soon or even turn into a descent after the top, then try to reduce the speed a little bit when you're going up, because once it flattens, it's much more efficient to accelerate then, or if it goes down, let gravity do its job and the car will accelerate by magic. Gravity. So always try to make use of the road, of the change of gradient, and just follow the flow of the road. I'll show you a video here of my trip with the Toyota Yaris Cross. You see here we're going downhill a little bit and I'm building up some momentum. Now it turns into an uphill section, and I'm reducing the speed, you see here, to 46, and once it flattens then I'm re-accelerating. But this is not only restricted to hilly terrain, it's also in city traffic when you're going over a bridge or through an underpass. Especially with hybrids, this can be very effective as you have the opportunity to decide in which mode the car operates. I'll show you a video here of my trip with the Toyota RAV4. We are in city traffic, we're not going up the bridge, and so before I reach the top of the bridge, I lift the accelerator a little bit and therefore initiate the electric motor to take over. The combustion engine switches off. As it flattens and turns into a descent, the amount of power needed is reduced, and further on, I even charge the batteries a little bit, as otherwise the speed would go up too much. With some cars, you can even press a button which enforces the EV mode as long as there is enough juice in the battery. And generally, make sure that the battery is as empty as possible before you start the descent in order to allow it to store the regenerative energy as much as possible. Tip number 5, think about what car you need. This might be a little bit controversial. If you already own a hybrid, that's probably not for you, but if you consider getting one, then that's something to think about. Make sure a hybrid suits the profile of your daily commute or ride. If your daily ride contains a descent with more than 150 to 200 or 500, 600 feet of descent in one piece, then the battery probably won't be able to store all the energy produced during the braking. The problem is, on the way up, you carry additional weight, the electric motor, the battery, but on the way down, you get back some energy that is stored and you can use later on. However, if the descent isn't long enough, you cannot store all the amount of energy potentially produced, and therefore you waste the energy and the friction brakes are used. I'll show you here a clip of my ride on the Ecodriver channel with the Renault Clio. It's a full hybrid. So you see on the left here the state of charge of the battery. We are now just above 50%, and I'm even just keeping the speed or slowly reducing the speed from 54 to, okay, it's 48 now, and the charge bar is already almost fully down, and the battery on the left is charged slowly. I'm braking a bit now because there is a left turn, and you see here the charge bar is already at 100%, and that means I'm using the friction brakes This is what I said earlier. And now it's going further down. And the state of charge is already up at the penultimate section here. Now I'm braking, you see. We're going around this turn. And state of charge is 100%. So the battery is full. This means then when I'm braking now, firstly, I probably cannot brake with the electric motor, as there is nowhere the electric energy can go. You see here I am on the brakes, reducing the speed, but the charge indicator isn't moving. So if you have a longer descent on your daily commute, then it might be worth thinking about getting a plug-in hybrid, because they have bigger batteries and can store more energy, or even a full EV. So those were my 5 tips of how to drive full hybrids really efficiently. If you want to see more of my content and all the tests I'm doing, then feel free to subscribe this channel over here. And if you hit the notification bell, you won't miss any new video. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time.